Instead, today I get to introduce you to The Crossing, School of Business and Entrepreneurship, and detail a little bit about what I've done so far with them and what I plan to do in the future. But in order to understand The Crossing and why they're an essential piece of the community here in Fort Wayne, we have to understand the issue around which they operate. So the high school graduation rate in Indiana last year was 89%, which is pretty high. It's typically in Indiana is higher than the national average and higher than most states, but there's still an issue. There's still over 3,000 high school students in the state that drop out of high school every year. And of those 3,000, about 90 of them this last year were from Allen County, which, as you can see, has drastically decreased over the course of the last couple years, but still that's almost 100 kids who knows where their future is going to be, and who knows what kind of opportunities they're going to have. This stat was kind of interesting to me. 12% of adults, 25 plus, that live in Indiana don't even have a high school education. And even high school, in a world, I think they're estimating now that just jobs in general in this region are two-thirds, so 67% of them are going to require some sort of college degree, associate or bachelor's degree, here in the coming years. And when a decent percentage of the population doesn't even have a high school diploma, that's a pretty big issue. And those issues follow the students throughout the course of their life. It's estimated that high school dropouts earn substantially less throughout the course of their life than high school graduates, and even more so than college graduates. And when you just do a simple calculation, divide that earning deficit between their working years until 65 or 70, and if they can save 10% of that and invest it at 10% each year, the cumulative effect, the difference between a high school dropout and a high school graduate is $750,000 in future value at retirement. And then when compared with college graduates, is almost $3 million, which is a pretty substantial effect of income deficit from these high schoolers who are dropping out, and that lasts for a long time. Crime and incarceration are highly correlated with high school dropouts, as well as unemployment. And in the country, as I mentioned, Indiana is pretty competitive in our high school graduation rates, but across the country, there's a significant number of students who are dropping out of high school. So that's where The Crossing comes in. The Crossing is a school. It's a fully accredited state high school that provides an alternative education for these students who are either have dropped out or are in danger of dropping out or have been kicked out of school or in danger of being kicked out of school. As a faith-based organization, they focus on a more holistic approach. Rather than just simply learning, they focus on spiritual health, mental health, physical, emotional health, and tie all those sort of aspects into the high school education. And as an independent, smaller organization, they're able to focus more specifically on the individual needs of the students. And the teachers are able to spend more time interacting one-on-one with the students, providing just a different sort of feel than they get in the public schools here in Fort Wayne, where the teacher-to-student ratio is 1 to 20. As well, another platform that sort of separates The Crossing from a typical high school is that half of the coursework is done online and is self-paced. And so that allows the students to stay on track, because if they have to miss school for a day or nobody could give them a ride or something like that, which happens a lot of times with these kind of students, they can still keep up with their work from wherever, and they can look and see real-time their progress, how much they have to go, how much they have completed, how many credits they have, and how close they are to graduation, which is sort of exciting. They get to own that a little bit and see, like, wow, this is actually doing something. Like, every time I come to school, it makes me this percentage closer to getting my high school diploma, which a couple months ago, they might have not even been thinking that was a possibility. Crossing started in 2004 as one location in Elkhart, where they're headquartered, but they've grown tremendously over the last decade with over 20 locations, 2 of which are in Fort Wayne, One is downtown, the central campus, and then one is on the southwest side of town. And I think out of all the stats that I've presented, my favorite one is this one right here. Students reporting positive relationships with the Crossing teachers. 91% across the whole Crossing organization, Indiana and Illinois. And these are kids who probably most of their schooling experience were in the principal's office getting yelled at for talking out in class or not showing up on time or being suspended or things like that. And these kids, for the first time, when they step into the Crossing, they feel like somebody likes them and wants them there and cares about them and their education. Over 500 graduates so far in this last decade would have been stats in that last slide, and now have such a tremendous opportunity with a high school diploma. These are some quotes from the Crossing, and I highlighted a couple of my favorite points. The first one says that we meet the students where they are. And I think that's so key to the effectiveness of the Crossing, in that they really mold their teaching style and their model around the students and their needs. They help better meet the needs of the student. And as the CEO stated, the Crossing is a family. And a lot of these students who are dropping out of school, that's not something that they've experienced a whole lot of, is a strong family who cares for them and wants to meet their needs. So the Crossing, I think, does a good job at reaching that aspect of the students. As I mentioned in their alternative education platform, they focus a lot on job training and giving the students hands-on skills, because a lot of them won't go to college. They'll get their degree and they'll look for a job. And with this, as part of the course requirements for students at the Crossing, they'll have some tangible experience, both in technical skills and trades, but as well as soft skills like work ethic and communication, leadership, and those kind of things. So job training programs are typically in a 3-tiered structure. So the first level is the microbusiness, and all the students participate in some aspect of the microbusiness. And then all of the campuses in their local environment partner with local organizations and businesses in the area. And so these work teams and these internships, the students are actually going and working alongside professionals from a local organization and getting experience in that way. And then the third step, the internship, is actually a paid position where the students earn a wage to work alongside the employees of a local organization. And here in Fort Wayne, and I'll touch on that later, but some of the skills that they learn through the experience in the microbusiness, which is where my focus is in this project, they learn some real technical business skills, how to account for a business and how to make things run in a profitable and organized manner. And these are high schoolers who are doing these things, and I didn't even know these words in high school. And so every time I go to the campus, I think I just am so jealous, because I would have had a blast doing something like this in high school, and instead I just sat in class all day. But as I mentioned, the local business partners, they get to interact with managers who hire employees who have high school diplomas. I mean, so they're networking and they're building relationships with employers, which is important. So here in Fort Wayne, Master Spas has partnered with the Crossing to help provide this job training experience for the students. And at the Master Spas campus, the Crossing has a campus located in Master Spas facility. That's the Southwest campus. And the students show up, they sit in the classroom and do their coursework, and they spend some time working on the microbusiness, where they manufacture wooden pallets and then sell them to Master Spas. And so the students are basically running this whole process, from ordering the materials to actually making the pallets to selling and invoicing and reporting them in the books of the company. They're guided by the staff of the Crossing that's on the campus, but they get to feel ownership of that. And so how the structure of the staff works out in Fort Wayne. There's a regional coordinator who oversees both campuses. And then there's a job training coordinator who is at the Master Spas campus and oversees the microbusiness and the work teams and the internship program. There's teachers who instruct in the classroom, and then there's job training assistants or instructors who help further run the business. And so that's where I come in. I've been able to bring a technical business knowledge and understanding of accounting processes and financial reporting that all of the employees with an education background have had a hard time understanding. So in my purpose at the Crossing, I feel I've served high schoolers from ministry and mentoring platforms for the last 3 years, and before that I was a high schooler. So I feel like I can relate to high schoolers, and I understand the things that they go through. And so that's one of my passions, is to be with them and to meet them and just to understand what's going on in their lives. Also, I'm a big fan of Fort Wayne, and I've lived most of my life here, and I chose to stay in town and do my undergraduate education. So I think for me to be a successful student, future businessman in Fort Wayne looks like being engaged in making the city a better place and sacrificing and serving the city that I live in my home. And I don't have any specific data, but when you go around downtown, walk around downtown, or see what businesses are moving into town, there's something going on here in the city, and things are changing and growing, and I want to be a part of that. So the Crossing is one way that I get to be a part of that. So what I've done here so far this semester is I go twice a week, about 3 hours at a time for X hours this semester. I've been on the campus about just under 60 hours this semester, which will hopefully be pretty consistent throughout the next year. I hope to spend close to 200 hours by the conclusion of the project on campus. I didn't update that. That was a mistake on my part. I was down there this week, so I was waiting to get an actual number, but X will have to do. And so I've actually gotten to help build pallets and do all kinds of projects and get to meet the students, have some discussions with them about business ideas and topics, as well as like what goes on in their lives and what their dreams and ambitions are for the future. So some of the specific projects that we've gotten to undertake are some pretty technical terms up there. We did a break-even analysis to determine what our profitable production levels had to be, materials audit to find out how many staples and wood were just thrown away that we pay for. But I think the biggest thing that we've done is in this general ledger, and these are all projects that I'm spearheading that the students are taking control of. So basically what I try to do is understand what needs to be done and then guide them to figure it out on their own, which is more difficult than just doing a break-even analysis, in my opinion. But so we made a general ledger to report all of our transactions, a real-time profit and loss position that shows a snapshot at the profitability of the company. And this is important because when I started in January, the Crossing had a job training instructor who had some technical business knowledge, who helped run this program, who had just left. At the same time, they had used an accounting software that they had just ended a subscription to. So as you can imagine, with no technical knowledge and no software, the accounting system was just floating into space, and there wasn't a whole lot of order or understanding of how it worked. And so, one, that's an interesting project for the students because that system conversions are a real thing that real companies go through all the time. And if they work in a business, chances are multiple times, most likely, they will experience a system conversion. So we've been trying to take this whole accounting system and move it into Excel, which is kind of a big challenge. But it's exciting and it's fun, and the students enjoy it too, which is the most important thing. I think in analyzing everything that I've done on the campus so far, I think the most important thing is that I've actually been able to connect with the students. And I think a lot like Maddie and Logan were saying, when somebody comes in who's just 3 years older than them and is in a position where they can really see themselves in a couple years, it's hard to look past and say, okay, when I'm 30, this is what I'm going to be doing. You know, but if they could look forward 3 years and say, like, wow, I could be studying business at IPFW, which is another goal of the project, is to recruit all of the students to come study business here. The Crossing doesn't know that, that's why I'm there, but that's really why I'm there. So looking forward into next year and the coming time that I spend with the Crossing, the goals of the micro-business itself, we'd like to find another customer to purchase our pallets, because as we have a single customer, our demand fluctuates with whatever Master Spas needs. And so if we could diversify our customer base, we could create a more steady demand and have a more efficient production schedule, because our demand isn't fluctuating as much. And then the most important future goal of the microbusiness is to develop this accounting system that I mentioned that's simple enough that the students own it and understand it and can teach it to the incoming students. As you can imagine, in a school like this, the turnover rate is very high. There's students coming in and going out all of the time. So if the students can understand what they're doing and teach it to the incoming students, then that creates sustainability, but also makes the process smoother, more exciting, and more efficient. The goals of this project are just that. So I hope to ensure the sustainability of the project so that the business can operate efficiently and profitable while I'm not there, or while someone like me is not there. And so part of that is the Students Teaching Students initiative. And then another part, I plan to publish a handbook, a guide with some standard operating procedures and some system diagrams of our operations, because a book can be there all the time. And when you're dealing with volunteers and people, they have schedules, they can only come 6 hours a week sometimes. But a book you can reference whenever you need. And so I hope that can be a helpful guide in the future. I plan to do some research over the summer regarding specific topics like college preparation and employment preparation. So I want to, in my limited time and access with the students, most effectively prepare them to come study here at IPFW and to be able to find a job. So I want to better groom myself to do that. I want to research their media rights. I'd love to use the students' their pictures and their testimonies and things like that in presentations like this without overstepping any legal boundaries. As well as we want to maximize the experience that they get in the job training program without overstepping any legal boundaries in terms of child labor laws and unpaid internship laws. So I want to do some research there in order to maximize their experience and mine at the school. And then I have some personal goals. So my personal views and beliefs align with what the Crossing believes. And so that gives me a platform to demonstrate those beliefs to the students. And I find them generally open and curious as to, they always ask questions about why I do the things that I do or think what I think. And so as probably expected, I want to see some of them graduate, and get jobs or come here and study with me at school. And then I'd like to grow personally in a couple areas too, in my willingness and desire to engage in the community and to be a servant and to be seeking who has needs and where they can be met. And so going forward, I think those will be good skills to have as a professional in Fort Wayne. Here's just a basic look at my anticipated timeline for the project. I began showing up on campus at the beginning of this spring. And then in the summer, when they're on their summer recess, is when I plan to do the bulk of my research. And then I'll be back on campus in the fall and spring of next year. And then by the end of my time on campus, I hope to have the handbook published so that when I leave, the business can maintain and be profitable. So if you have any interest in finding more out about the Crossing or Master Spas or their what they do or the kind of programs they offer or how to get involved, then go check them out. There's their websites, and it's a worthwhile experience, in my opinion. So if you have any questions or feedback or suggestions, then I'd love to hear them. So thanks.
So why would you want to recruit them for business here at KFW when there's great engineering programs?
That's the age-old question of who's better, business or engineering. But in reality, I think just even them considering applying to college is incredible, because most of these students, when you talk to them about graduating, they say, oh, I just need 2 more credits. I'll be out of here in May. And then they say, I never thought that I was going to graduate from high school. It just wasn't in their plans. And they weren't going to do anything about it. And now they have this tremendous opportunity.
How many students does the Crossing accept each year?
Yeah, so the Crossing is limited in that programs like this cost money, and money is a finite resource. But we try not to turn away students to the extent that's possible. In Fort Wayne, at the Master Spas campus, there's about 25 or so students, and at the main campus, there's, I think, a few more, but a similar number. In total, the Crossing across all of the campuses and states has close to 3,000 students.
And to graduate only, you said, what, 520 since 2004? So what's the dropout rate?
I'm not exactly sure. I do know that for a lot of students, their experience with the Crossing is short-term, where they get kicked out of school or something happens and they come to the Crossing and then they're put back into their public school or their home school. I don't have the exact numbers on that, but I think that would be an interesting statistic, is to see if students are still dropping out even after coming to the Crossing.
I was wondering if you're going to get IRB certified for your handbook, and if so, are you going to just use the handbook in Fort Wayne, or would that be something that you would distribute to all the Crossing locations?
So in terms of my specific handbook, I haven't looked yet into the IRB requirements for that, but a lot of so our microbusiness, we manufacture pallets and work with master spas, but the microbusinesses manifest differently across the Crossing based on who the local partner is and what their local resources are. And so I think there's some aspects of it that could be translated across the different campuses, but a lot of the specific focus will be the relationship between master spas and the Crossing. And so that will be hard to translate across campuses.
I'm just curious where the other campus on Fort Wayne is, and does it work with a business as well?
Mm-hmm. So the other campus is located on East Berry Street in a church called Love Church. And they do have multiple micro businesses there. And they just recently, I was attending the board meeting a couple months ago, and they had just recently partnered, and I don't know the name of the organization, but they had partnered with an organization that basically helps unemployed people find jobs. And so what they were doing was they were taking the students in. They had a little thrift shop, and they gave them an hour and a certain stipend in the thrift shop to get interview materials. And then they've been placing them with organizations around the city. And I need to look more into that, because that is very interesting. And I don't have an exact name of the company. But
Yeah.
So clearly you spent a lot of time there and you're planning on spending more time actually on campus. So what does a day look like there? Do you come in with a set plan, like today we're gonna build these things on an Excel spreadsheet, or do you like put out accounting fires as they get ignited, or what do you do?
Yeah, good question. So some days, some of our big projects like the general ledger that I mentioned, that's an ongoing process. So that's something that we usually spend a little bit of time on every day. Some days I show up and just say, what, like, where can I help today? Or putting out accounting fires as they come up, as you put it. And so it really is day to day. Some days I spend a lot of time out with the students on the production team and help them make the pallets. And so yeah, it just depends on what a typical day. Yeah.
I saw what you'd listed for the objectives you want to actually achieve on a previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think would be an indicator of success on a personal level for you?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be one of the toughest aspects of this project, is how do I measure how effective this is? Because I could show up all the time and list off all of the different projects that we've done and the accounting procedures that they now understand, but how do I actually measure my effectiveness? And so I've tossed around some ideas of following the students or tracking them after they graduate, and that would touch back to your question as to do they finish school. But I know here in the business school we're required to make a LinkedIn account and connect with the School of Business, and so that allows the School of Business to track us as we move along professionally in our career. So some aspect of that I think could be tied into this, whether we expect them to keep an up-to-date LinkedIn account throughout their whole lives. I don't know if that's reasonable, but I think there's some way, or maybe the crossing keeps a database of what their students are doing now. I think that'd be one measure. And I think another measure is just that if they keep saying thank you to me for being there and keep asking me to come back and giving me new projects, then I think that's a pretty clear sign that I'm still of value to them and that my service is still benefiting the organization. So I think those two things could be a pretty clear example of my effectiveness as a volunteer at the Crossing. Great, so if there's no other questions, then thank you all very much for being here.